The holiday season can be a mixed bag sometimes. Between the socks and the body wash, there can be little surprise in an adult Christmas. However, there's an exception for me this Christmas, where the Smartboy from Hyperkin appeared under my Christmas tree. The very first console I owned was a Nintendo Game Boy, and it was my first foray into gaming, and I still have the original cartridges and Game Boy that I acquired in my youth. It's a good thing I kept them too, because one of the primary usages of the Hyperkin is not just to look like a retro Game Boy, but to play old Game Boy and Game Boy Color cartridges. Happily, the unit supports NTCS/PAL cartridges, so most people can be accommodated. The setup for the Smartboy is a little complex. There is a proprietary cable that you need to use for the initial setup, where you would have to connect both the Hyperkin Link unit and your phone through the cable. It took me about 2 tries to get this up and running, but my biggest fear for me would be losing that cable should I ever swap handsets, which I do fairly regularly. Though a nice thing to balance out this is that the Smartboy does not require any batteries, unlike the Game Boy that it's modelled on. After that though, it's predominantly smooth sailing. The Smartboy needs 2 separate apps in order to work with whatever handset you're using. Both are free, and once you have them installed, its setup, it is seamless every time after that. While the Smartboy is designed for the Samsung Galaxy line of phones, it does have an adjustable frame which will adjust to most phone sizes, regardless of what you have. Right now I have a Galaxy Note 8, which is on the wide side, but the Smartboy is able to support it just fine. There is a bottom at the back of the unit which expands the width of the phone, and then you can push the sides together to ensure a good fit. The buttons are tactical, and the unit has the same button and hand feel as the old Game Boys used to. I would say the noise of the keys have a little bit more of an audible clack, but nothing that detracts from the overall experience, particularly in the age of mechanical keyboards and cherry switches. Games that are inserted into the cartridge slot at the back are put in the traditional way, like you would expect. Those games are subsequently upgraded to your handset's resolution. Your mileage may vary, but Tetris, Pokemon Gold, and Mickey's Grand Adventure have never looked so crystal clear. There were only ever 1 or 2 features that were borderline annoying. Usually if you touched the back of a cartridge in a Game Boy, that's it. You stop playing and risk losing your cartridge data. Although I'm sure there were many of us as kids who just ripped their cartridges out of the unit while the Game Boy was still on. I certainly did. And I instinctively did the same when I was swapping over from one cartridge to another, just going to show old habits die hard, only to be greeted with a piracy warning, which then locks down the entire system. So that in itself is a bit of a pain to contend with, as you physically have to take your phone out of the unit to close and restart all of the apps again. It only happened a handful of more times in my few days with it, and largely I fear that was user error on my part by not inserting the cartridges firmly enough into the unit. So while the arguments of its application is a worthy discussion regardless of your opinion on piracy, it's undeniable that it does tend to take away from the enjoyment of the experience. So is this something that I could recommend to the gamer in your life? Sure, but at $59 for the unit itself, plus the additional cartridge costs, which depending on the game can cost more than you might think, it's a hard sell to recommend to anybody other than the hardcore retro gamers in your life. But what about you? Could you see yourself giving this to the gamer in your life? Let me know in the comments below, and don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button while you're there. And while you're at it, why not share this on your favourite social networks? As usual, thank you all so very much for watching, and I will see you all in the next episode.